The Loud House. Whenever somebody mentions those words to me, all I can think about is the show that saved Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon, before The Loud House arrived, was complete and utter crap. And I do mean that, by the way. The entire channel itself had delved into the bottomless pit of garbage, with the exception of Harvey Beaks, ever since they started premiering shows like Sanjay and Craig, Fanboy and Chum Chum, and a few others. Oh, and don't get me started on Breadwinners, a show that gave me a headache after headache every time it came on. Now, when The Loud House first premiered on Nick, I didn't watch it at first. I honestly thought the show itself was going to be shit, like the other shows on Nick at the time. However, I later gave it a chance, due to my cousin ringing me up on my cell phone at numerous times of the day, practically begging me to watch it, as he himself said that the show itself was really good, and that I wouldn't be disappointed by it. Well, he was right. I wasn't disappointed in the slightest. Once I watched one episode of the show, I became addicted to it like a fat guy to chocolate. The plot was amazing, the characters were funny as hell, and it had that early 90s feel to it that other shows lacked. The parents' faces being covered up, the right use of gross out jokes, and most importantly, the constant action, just to name a few. So yeah, The Loud House was a personal favorite of mine. That is, until that episode showed up. I can't exactly recall what time it was when this episode aired on my television, but if I had to make a guess, it may have been at around 2 or 3 in the afternoon. At that time, I was just sitting back on my couch, relaxing and enjoying my Saturday morning like most teenagers my age at the time. I had wound up finding myself channel surfing to find something good to watch, as I was getting rather bored with just sitting on the couch. Then, I wound up getting to Nickelodeon. An episode of Breadwinners had already ended by the time that I got into the channel, and right there below the credits was a promo showing that a new episode of The Loud House was coming on next. Now, me being a huge Loud House fan, I was almost shitting myself with excitement. Another new Loud House episode? I mean, they had already played a new episode earlier that morning, but this was a steal for me. So I just sat back and readied myself for the episode. After the credits rolled, the intro to the show began, which pretty much went like how almost every episode of The Loud House would begin with. However, at the very end of the intro, when the name of the show was being displayed, Lily didn't walk across the screen saying, "Boo boo," like she usually did. This was a bit odd, but honestly, I wasn't really going to question it. After the intro, the scene faded to the title card of the episode, which to my shock, wasn't the usual layout that the show usually portrayed. Instead of the usual fun, comic-like background and font, it was instead replaced with a black background with white font in the middle of it that read, "Girls Gone." I blinked my eyes a few times in curiosity as to what the hell was going on. I mean, why was this happening? The title card then faded in, and then started fading out to Lincoln Loud sitting down on a box in the basement with a forlorn look etched on his face. Now I knew that something was wrong with this scene. Lincoln never liked going into the basement. In fact, he even had a bit of a phobia of the place ever since he was forced to go down there in the episode The Dark Basement. So why was he here? Lincoln just sighed and hopped off the box that he was sitting on, and then made his way over towards a much larger box not too far away from where he was sitting at. He then proceeded to open the box up and to start to rummage around in it like a Christmas present. After a few moments of him doing this and throwing out various items like a wig, a bow, and an old pillow, Lincoln then stopped and just stared into the box with a soft smile on his face. He just stared at whatever it was that was in the box for a bit, before the scene faded out again. A few seconds passed, and this time, The scene showed the interior of Principal Higgins' office. Principal Higgins was sitting calmly in his chair, while both Luna and Luann just sat across from the principal's desk. A look of worry and fear plastered on their faces. Across from the room was Lisa Loud. She was shaking violently, her clothes ripped in some parts, and her glasses cracked across the edges. After about a minute of silence, the door to the principal's office slowly creaked open, only to show both Mr. and Mrs. Loud walking into the room, their faces obscured like usual. The two then made their way towards the front of the desk and stood next to their daughters. This is when the conversation started. "Principal Higgins, thank you for notifying us. However, you didn't really give us much of a reason as to why we needed to come here?" Mr. Loud asked. "Well, you see, Mr. and Mrs. Loud, this situation, involves your daughters," Principal Higgins said. "Why, are they in trouble?" Mrs. Loud asked. "No, they aren't. However, your two younger daughters, Lola and Lana Loud, have gone missing. Lisa was also missing for a time being, but thankfully, she managed to supposedly escape from something." "Wait, our daughters are missing?" Mr. Loud exclaimed. "Yes, but you shouldn't worry. The police officers in the area are doing all that they can to try and find them and bring them back safely." "Well, if I ask, why are Luna and Luann here?" Mr. Loud asked. "They were the ones who had found Lisa after she had managed to come back from where she was taken to. As of right now, nobody has been able to talk with Lisa. She's in a catatonic state of now." "Oh my gosh. Well, who was it that was..." Before Mr. Loud could finish his sentence, the door to the office area was busted open by a female officer. The force of the door opening caused both Luna and Luann to scream out, while Lisa just huddled into a small ball and cried. The officer herself was covered in cuts and bruises, and her face showed a look of shock and a bit of paranoia. She then began to speak. "The other officers and I, we had wound up tracking the location to where the other children had been taken to. It was a large abandoned building on the outskirts of the school that seemed to have been abandoned for quite some time. The place itself was surrounded by barbed wire, and so we had to climb up it and try not to get injured. Once that was done, me and the other officers began to investigate the building. On the outside, it didn't seem that there was anything wrong. However, once we started to investigate the house inside the building, we started to see some signs. Across from the dirty floor that we could see, thanks to the broken windows outside, we saw a small trail of blood leading into a large room. Of course, we had to go further, as we thought that maybe one of the kids might have injured herself on the fence or even in the building. Once we got inside the room, we found a few things. From what I was told by a few students, one of the girls was a beauty queen who wore a lot of jewelry." The officer then reached into a small bag and pulled out an evidence bag that contained the broken and dirty tiara that Lola Loud wore in the show. In that instant, both Luna and Luann broke down on the spot, falling out of their seats in grief in the process. Lisa Loud took one look at the tiara and began to hyperventilate and scream in the process. Then, the scene cut to show both of the parents' faces, which wasn't something that the show usually did. The faces of both of the parents showed a look of fear, shock, horror, and hell, every kind of emotion that was under the sun. They both said nothing, but continued to look at the tiara in shock. All the while, the officer began speaking again. "We found the tiara, as well as a small red hat and shoes that looked to belong to the other sister's twin. There was also a wrench across from the clothes, covered in some blood, which was still fresh. This, of course, ruled in favor of a struggle having taken place here. After a few minutes of searching around and gathering evidence, we heard a loud bang coming from one of the doors in the factory. We all gathered out weapons, ready to take out the monster that was responsible for this madness. And then, the door that had been banged on opened up. We couldn't see too much due to the lack of sunlight illuminating the area. But the one thing we did see was the man coming straight for us. He yelled out a loud scream that deafened us, and it was too quick for us. We tried to shoot it down, but every time it was hit, it just got faster and faster. We ultimately needed to get out of there as soon as possible, which we did. Although, that monster managed to take out a few of the other officers and attempted to maul me in the process. Thankfully, I managed to escape. Now, here's what I think happened. This person had managed to lure the twins, as well as Lisa, into going into the factory. There, he proceeded to attack all three of them. However, Lisa managed to survive. As of now, we've already secured the area. We're not sure when we can go back in, but we'll try and find your daughter soon. The scene then cut to the scared faces of both of the parents, with the same shocked faces from before. The episode then cuts back to the basement area, but Lincoln is nowhere to be seen. The door to the basement opens up, and Mr. and Mrs. Loud walk down into the basement, calling out for Lincoln. They continued to search the basement high and low, until the two of them made a gruesome discovery. There, right next to the boxes, was a decapitated Lincoln. Right next to his body was a note. Mr. Loud shakily grabbed the note and read it aloud. "Dear family, my sisters are gone, and I know it can't be denied. I've decided to join my sisters in heaven." After that, the episode cut to black and ended right then and there. I was honestly confused, scared, but more or less intrigued at what I had just watched. How did this get on air? And more importantly, what the hell did I just watch? Before I could cut off the television, a loud burst of static stopped me dead in my tracks. After about a few seconds of static, another title card came up saying, "Sisters of Suicide." This episode didn't really have much of a plot to it. It just showed each and every Loud sister getting annoyed at the very things that each girl loved to do, and ultimately killing them in a gruesome fashion. Lori was strangled with her phone cords for talking on her phone. Lucy was beaten to death with her book for reading a poem. Luna had her guitar shoved down her fucking throat for playing music. Luann was hit in the head with a microphone for telling jokes. Lenny's tongue was cut out for acting dumb. Lana and Lola were ripped apart for liking dirt and makeup. Lisa was dissolved with her chemicals for doing science things. Lynn was stepped on with cleats. Lincoln was beheaded again. And poor Lily, she was poisoned. After all of that, the episode finally ended, and the normal programming started up again. I could honestly tolerate some messed up shit, but honestly, this was too much. I mean, who the fuck made this disgusting excuse for an episode? I know for a fact that it certainly wasn't Chris Savino or any of the other staff, that was for sure. I tried getting in contact with a few of my friends to see if they had seen the same shit that I had seen, but they didn't bother picking up their phones. It's been a while since I've seen that episode, and to be honest, I'm still intrigued about it. I honestly wasn't able to get any answers from the internet, and attempted to call Nickelodeon Studios about this incident was most likely going to either make me look like an idiot, or they blocked my number entirely. I asked my friends about this, and they told me that they hadn't even watched Nick that day. I tried contacting my cousin about the episode to see if he himself had seen it, but he just didn't have any answers for me either. So yeah, I still love the Loud House, that's for damn sure, but I'll never forget about that episode. The episode known as Gone Girls. Well, hello there, my horror crew. I hope you enjoyed today's narration. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, and click that bell. As you see right next to me are my social media links. They will be down in the description below if you want to check them out. So yeah. I hope you all enjoyed today's video, and I will see you in the next one. Have a scary day, my horror crew.